In the tranquil village of Willowbrook, where the wind whispered through ancient trees and sunlight danced on cobblestone paths, there lived an elderly widow named Mrs. Thompson. Once, her home was a haven of laughter and love, but now it echoed with the silence of loneliness. Her husband, Harold, had passed away many years ago, and her children had long since flown the nest, leaving her with only memories to keep her company. Despite her solitude, Mrs. Thompson remained a pillar of kindness in the community. She would often be seen tending to her garden, a once flourishing haven of vibrant blooms, now overrun with weeds and neglect. Yet with each passing year, her strength waned, and the garden faded along with her spirit. One fateful day, as Mrs. Thompson sat alone on her porch, lost in thoughts of days gone by, she heard the gentle laughter of children drifting through the air. Curious, she peered over the hedge to see a group of youngsters playing in the street. Among them was a girl named Lily, whose eyes sparkled with curiosity and compassion. Lily couldn't help but notice the sadness etched upon Mrs. Thompson's face as she watched them play. Determined to make a difference, she rallied her friends, and together they hatched a plan to bring joy back into Mrs. Thompson's life. With shovels in hand and hearts full of hope, the children descended upon Mrs. Thompson's garden, determined to breathe new life into its weary soil. They worked tirelessly, pulling weeds, planting seeds, and whispering words of encouragement to the earth below. As days turned into weeks, the garden began to flourish once more, mirroring the blossoming friendships that had taken root within its borders. Lily and her friends would visit Mrs. Thompson daily, regaling her with tales of their adventures and sharing the simple joys of childhood. Word of their kindness spread throughout the village, touching the hearts of all who heard it. Neighbors who had once passed Mrs. Thompson by with averted gazes now stopped to chat, offering their assistance and companionship in her time of need. As the garden bloomed, so too did Mrs. Thompson's spirit. The loneliness that had once weighed heavily upon her heart began to lift, replaced by a newfound sense of belonging and purpose. One crisp autumn afternoon, as the leaves rustled in the breeze and the scent of freshly turned earth filled the air, the villagers gathered in Mrs. Thompson's garden to celebrate its transformation. Laughter rang out as children danced among the flowers, their faces alight with joy. Mrs. Thompson stood among them, her eyes shining with gratitude as she looked upon the faces of those who had brought her back to life. She realized then that she was not alone, that the bonds of friendship and compassion had woven themselves around her like a warm embrace. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began to twinkle overhead, Mrs. Thompson made a silent vow to herself. She would never forget the kindness that had been shown to her, and she would spend the rest of her days paying it forward in any way she could. And so, with a heart full of gratitude and a garden blooming with love, Mrs. Thompson's story became a testament to the power of compassion and the beauty of human connection. And in the hearts of those who had been touched by her tale, a seed was planted, a seed of kindness that would continue to grow and flourish, spreading its roots far and wide and touching the lives of all who crossed its path.